What the hell do you think you're building with these AI systems? Like, what is this?
Because the others, from what I've seen, do not strive for truth.
What do they strive for? Just before we started, you said you were up till 4 in the morning?
It's more like 5 in the morning, but
okay.
We got the XAI data center, supercomputer center, beginning installation to start of training in 19 days, which is the fastest that anyone has ever gotten a supercomputer to train. The stated goal of XAI is to understand the universe, really just understand the nature of the universe and even what questions to ask about the universe.
I've used Grok a lot, and it's not as woke as ChatGPT, but it's still woke, like it's still deviate. Can you address that by, it's just a language model at the moment, let's say, if it also understood images, if it also understood behavior.
It actually does understand images at this point.
Is the language model and the image understanding, are they stacked on top of each other? Because I think that's partly how we triangulate psychologically, right? We have an imagination and we have a verbal module, but those things have to work in sync.
It certainly is intended to work in sync, intended to be what's called a multimodal model, which means understanding text, images, and video, and audio.
All this data that you've collected with your cars, Tesla's a car company, but when I look at what you do,
AI company.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Well.
Maybe more. Like, those aren't cars, those are autonomous robots.
Yeah, they're robots on 4 wheels. Autonomous robots on 4 wheels, They just look like a car. XAI is a fairly new company. It's just a little over a year old. We have a lot of catching up to do relative to companies that have been around for 5 or 10 or 20 years. We're catching up fast. I think with the velocity of improvement of XAI is faster than any other company out there. We were just able to install and bring online a massive new training center that we, like as I mentioned, we're building in Memphis.
What the hell do you think you're building with these AI systems? Like, what is this?
What all the AI companies are aiming to build is digital superintelligence. Intelligence that's far smarter than any human, and then ultimately an intelligence that is far smarter than all humans combined. Now one can say, like, is this a wise thing to do? Isn't this dangerous? Well, unfortunately, whether we think that or not, it is being done. From my standpoint, from the XAI team standpoint, we have the choice of being a spectator or a participant.
But that's life, man.
I think if we're a participant, we've got a better chance, hopefully, of steering AI in a direction that is beneficial to humanity.
So why do you trust yourself on that front? Just out of, I mean, that's an important question, right?
I don't trust myself entirely.
Good. Well, that's, yes, fair enough. Okay. Yeah. But you're in an ethical conundrum, right?
Yes, it is an ethical conundrum.
Right, because you said, well, this is happening. Now, the excuse that something is happening is not a rationale for participating in it, but then your next take is, well, we have the chance to do this properly, let's say, as
maybe
opposed
better.
to... Okay.
We really just need to think that maybe we've got a chance of it being better to some degree than what others are doing, and we'll strive to avoid some of the pitfalls or directions that the others are going in, because the others, from what I've seen, do not strive for truth.
What do they strive for?
They strive for, well, they strive to give an answer, but they are, I think, trained to be politically correct. And the woke mind virus is woven in throughout them.
Right, because the postmodern take is, well, all it is a plethora of power games, and so there's no rank ordering approaches to the truth in terms of their ethical suitability, but that's not the game that you're playing. And what's convinced you that that's not a useful way of approaching things?
Well, I think you can look at a given belief system and critique it as being likely to enhance or decrease enlightenment. Will any given belief system improve our understanding of the universe? Will we learn more things? Will we achieve a deeper understanding of physics?
Right, so that's grounded at least in part in a scientific framework, from the sounds of it.
Well, I think there are facts about the world.
Yes, right.
There are things that are extremely likely to be true versus less likely to be true. I think if one thinks in terms of probabilities about any given sort of axiomatic statement, then that's the right way to think about it. Now, some things are 99.99% to be true. You can run experiments, you can confirm them. And others perhaps have a low probability of truth, 1% likely to be true, or just using extremes here. But any given statement has, I think, should be thought of as having, unless it's a tautology, it should be thought of as having a probability of being true or untrue, or a probability of being relevant to an argument or not relevant to an argument. We're just talking about the basics of.
Okay. So let me put a twist on that too. So one of the things that really struck me about your public pronouncements in recent years was your insistence that we're in a natal crisis and that that's actually a problem.
Well, that's factually true.
Well, it depends on whether you think the planet would be better off if it was depopulated. Right?
I'm not an
Ehrlich's
extinctionist.
line. Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Ehrlich is a genocidal maniac, as far as I'm concerned, and I think he's a terrible human being.
Yes, and he's never admitted that he was wrong, and he was unbelievably wrong. He made a famous bet. You know the bet.
I hate Paul Ehrlich. I just want to be clear about that. I think he's terrible, and his books have done great damage to humanity.
I talked to a philosopher a while back who was an antinatalist, trying to get my finger on that. There was a recent research article published on this too. Antinatalists are much more likely to show dark tetrad traits: Machiavellian, psychopathic, narcissistic, and sadistic, because those first three weren't enough, right? And so those things are tightly aligned, especially the best predictor was psychopathy for being an antinatalist.
Sure.
Right. Well, and the psychopaths are very, very, very self-centered, right? They're like overgrown 2-year-olds, overgrown, aggressive 2-year-olds. So that's not good. How did you start to understand that one of the fundamental ethical problems is different than a scientific problem? One of the fundamental ethical problems that's plaguing the West is this catastrophically low birth rate. And you know, when you started making public pronouncements.
Observing the numbers, I mean, I noticed this 20 plus years ago, that the trend in birth rates for really all countries past a certain level of economic development was trending to well below replacement, if not already below replacement. And if you extrapolate the curve, which one always has to be cautious about extrapolating any demographic curve, but if these trends continue, most countries will dwindle into insignificance. They might completely die out.
So I've been thinking about that in relationship to sacred images.
Okay.
Okay, well, the sacred image of masculinity in the West is a crucifixion, but a man who's crucified. But the sacred image of a woman isn't a woman. The sacred image of a woman is a woman and an infant, right? It's a dyad and not a monad.
Well, I mean, I should perhaps go back to what is the foundation of my philosophy that I think helps build up to explain my actions. When I was I don't know, about 11 or 12 years old, I had somewhat of an existential crisis because there just didn't seem to be any meaning in the world, no meaning to life. And so I actually tried to read all the religious texts.
At that age?
Yes. I was a voracious reader as a kid. You know, obviously read the Bible, I read the Quran, the Torah, you know, the various, a bit on the Hindu side, just trying to understand all these things. And obviously as a 12-year-old, you're not really going to understand these things super well, but I've just...
Well, you understood it well enough to have an existential crisis when you were 11 or 12.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure
that's a start.
Does anyone have an answer that makes sense? And then I started getting into the philosophy books, and I read Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is really a book on philosophy disguised as humor. And what the point that Adams tries to make there is that we don't actually know all the answers, obviously.
Yeah.
In fact, we don't even know what the right questions are to ask. That's where he has, you know, Earth is actually a giant computer to understand the answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? And comes up with the answer 42. What does that mean? It says, the thing that's going to take a computer far more powerful than Earth is to understand what question to ask.
Yeah, right.
That's simply the wrong question.
So was that the key realization, that the question
I would
was
say
the
that
thing?
was a fundamental turning point, yeah.
One of the things that you see constantly portrayed in redemptive hero myths across the world is that the adventure is the thing and that the search is the thing, rather than there being a final answer, as absurd as 42 might be, right? The conclusive answer is something like deep engagement in the process. So I'll give you an example of that. So in the Sermon on the Mount's a very detailed set of instructions.
Yeah.
So there's 3 parts to it. The first is aim at the highest thing that you can possibly conceive of and keep modifying that so your aim gets better. Number 2 is make the presumption that other people have the same intrinsic value as you do.
Well, we have to be careful about that one.
But the third thing is, once you do those 2 things, you can concentrate on the moment. See, and that seems to be, even technically, you can think about this neuropsychologically. So if you're looking for meaning is a form of incentive reward. And incentive reward is dopaminergically mediated. And incentive reward occurs in relationship to advancement towards a goal, which is a form of entropy minimization, as it turns out, according to Carl Friston, who knows this sort of thing.
Entropy is the ultimate boss battle.
Negative emotion signifies the emergence of entropy, and positive emotion on the dopaminergic side signals its reduction. But there's something that's more complex there, because the higher the goal that you're trying to attain, the more intrinsic value each step towards it comprises, and that's neuropsychologically accurate. And so part of the wisdom of the Sermon on the Mount is that if you posit the highest imaginable goal, then any step towards it that captures your attention is also deeply meaningful. And so that's an answer to what the meaning is of process, rather than, say, something like 42. And you said, it seems to me that you were intimating that your discovery through atoms, that the question was the thing, was key to the resolution of your existential crisis.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's part of the reason that you're motivated to, say, build Grok 3 and look deeper.
To understand.
To
understand the universe.
It spoke to me more than any other music I had ever heard before, you know? I was never really good at much else, you know? So I don't know, once I found out